So our goal for the next few videos is to learn some features that are going to let us create an advanced animatic that takes advantage of what Storyboard Pro has to offer. The first thing I wanted to cover is adding motion to our board by animating the camera and our layers. We already looked at the basics of animating the camera. You take the camera tool, and in the tool properties, you can add keyframes on the timeline, then adjust the position of the start and end, and the computer creates a move between those positions. And you can reposition your keyframes to change the timing over the course of the shot. We can preview what the move looks like by using the play controls up here. You'll notice that these are all the same options from when we were looking at pitch mode. And I would also recommend you go into your preferences and assign a keyboard shortcut to the play button. We're going to be using it a lot from this point on. Now this camera move feels a little unnatural, and that's because there's one more important feature I need to point out, and that's easing. Over here in the tool properties for the camera tool, there are these fields here for ease in and ease out. Ease in is the amount of time it takes the camera to gradually accelerate to full speed. And the ease out is the amount of time it takes to decelerate into the B position. So if we give, say, 12 frames of ease in and ease out, now our camera move looks more natural and realistic. Now let's apply those same ideas to animating the actual content of our drawings. You'll notice that next to every layer there's this little gray stick figure guy. If you click that, it enables animation mode, and it turns to a yellow running man. You'll also notice that it added a keyframe down on our timeline, but this time it's on the bottom instead of on top like with the camera. If we click the running man to disable animation mode, we get a warning that this will remove all the keyframes that are currently set for that layer. Now we can also enable animation mode on groups too, and it works exactly the same way, but it will apply the motion to all the contents of the group as one unit. So how do we actually make the motion? Well, the key is this tool, the Layer Transform tool. This gives you a transform box that lets you move, scale, and rotate the layer or the group. This dot here is the pivot point of the layer. You want to position it somewhere that makes sense for that particular drawing. It will remember that position if you come back later with the transform tool. This is different from when we would select something with our select tool and then transform it. That edits the drawing, but the layer transform tool just alters the entire layer itself. If I turn on the animation field guide, which is basically the coordinate system for a layer, and then use the layer transform tool, you can see how the whole layer is getting manipulated. This tool is how we'll set positions for our layers. When we're using this tool and the layer has animation enabled, in the tool properties, we have buttons for adding keyframes, resetting keyframes, and deleting keyframes. And once you have multiple keyframes, you can move between them with these arrow buttons here. Or you can also use these ones down here on the timeline. So this works a lot like our camera keyframes. We add a keyframe and position our element. Then on another keyframe, we give it a different position, and it animates it. And also, like with the camera tool, we can add easing to the motion with these fields. Now, unlike the camera tool, we can't move the keyframes outside the range for this panel, since this layer we're animating doesn't necessarily exist on those other panels. But there are some tricks for making an animation that spans multiple panels. Let's say we want this character to move across the screen, but we want to go through several poses as they move. Well, what we can do is animate the whole move using just the first pose, and make sure the timing of the overall motion is right. Then, at the point we want to switch to the second pose, we can right-click and choose Split Panel at Current Frame. Now we have another panel, but it continues the motion for this layer right where it left off. We can then replace the drawing on this layer with a new pose. And then do the same thing for all the other poses that we want. Now let's say you already have a set of poses on different panels, but nothing's animated yet. Well, what you can do in this case is, first of all, make sure all the poses are on a layer with the same name and are sized and positioned in the same place. Then, animate the motion on just the first panel. Then go up to Layer, Spread Layer Motion. And this will let you spread the motion we just made across either all the panels in the shot or just a certain number that we specify. Here I'm just going to spread it over the next two panels because the Phoenix is already in position on the last panel. If we click OK, it takes that motion we had on this layer and stretches it out proportionally over the rest of the panels. So now the motion happens over the total duration of all those panels, and it applies it to all the layers with the same name as our original one. You'll probably have to do some adjusting after the fact to get the positioning and timing right on each panel. But you can see it does give us a nice continuous motion. Hopefully you're starting to imagine how useful these tools will be when we want to start making our animatic. Next, we're going to get even more elaborate and make the jump to 3D. We'll start by looking at an overview of the 3D workspace in the next video. I'll see you there.